Today is all about Avengers. There has been a new content drop finally after a long time, and myself and Paul Tassi are going to talk about it and argue to the death. Paul, you
Yes.
talked during the intro. No, just kidding. It's totally fine. On today's show, we're going to be talking about Avengers, the new release that came out, the future plans, what we like about it, what's not working, how do they get new players, how do they get motivation for lapsed players, will this game be abandoned is the final question. But so let's start positive. What do you actually like about Avengers, Paul? Why do you have 150 character to start with?
Why do I have 150 characters?
Yeah.
Actually, no, seven. I couldn't do Hawkeye, but I do have like seven with between 140 and 150. Fundamentally, as a brawler, Avengers is one of the best I've played in a very long time. I think they have done a fantastic job with the character kits of all the individual heroes, which is the most fun I've had kind of with a superhero in this genre since individual Batman and Spider-Man games for those series. But I think they really accomplished something impressive here by making these very diverse kits that feel fun to kind of beat up all these robots and aim agents and stuff. So it is literally just extremely fun to actually play. And then that was true with the first content drop with Kate Bishop. She was an entirely new hero that was one of the best they made. So it's been a delayed schedule, but it's always been fun to play as these characters, and that is probably the single biggest thing the game has going for it, I feel.
I have to say, when I played it more avidly, I guess you could say, the story was good. I enjoyed the story. I went through it. I connected with Kamala Khan as a lead, which was, surprising. I didn't expect that. I really, really liked how they all interacted, and she kind of became the focal group for the entire group. And unfortunately for me, it started and it ended with that. Now, with the beta that they had, I actually really, really got into Black Widow and her sort of combat kit, and I was really, really enjoying her character. And then when the full game came out, I basically did Iron Man because I figured you could fly everywhere and get all the chests and armor and whatever you need quickly, right? So that you could, level them up really quick. And now that I've been going back with these new expansion packs to check out the characters and everything, it's been really, really hard for me to get invested in the sandbox again. I'm going through, I've gotten my gear score up to like from 50 to 60. 50 is about where you end the campaign. I'm up to 60, and I know the grind ahead of me. There used to be a method where you could hop into the harm rooms and just farm that to get to level 50 and get your gear up and then go up to the more difficult things. And I just don't care. I don't think that this game is going to have the legs that Square and I'm sure Marvel hopes it does. And that's really, really concerning for me. So I'm going to go right to my next question for you. What are they doing that's not working? Where are they having disconnect with players like myself, in your opinion, Paul? Because you're their target. You're playing, you were playing, you have all these characters leveled up. Uh, yeah, where are they falling short?
They're fundamentally, I think their eyes were bigger than their stomachs. And this is like the old looter problem where everyone thinks they know how to make a looter until you actually get to making a looter, and then it is much, much, much harder than you think it is. And in the case of the Avengers, I think they had a very clear plan of what they wanted to do, and they wanted to kind of roll out this elaborate ongoing storyline that started again with a very strong campaign. You're right, that is a very good campaign. It's probably the best base campaign of almost any looter in the genre, which is not normal. Like, you don't really have good base stories in games like this. But the problem became, once the game came out, there was too many things to fix at the beginning. And so they spent months and months and months just trying to fix the basic things that were wrong with it. And that totally disrupted this initial plan they had, that they didn't technically like fully announce it, but like they were definitely trying to get at least, I think, 2 to 3 heroes out before the new year. And that got extended into 6 months, and then even more extended into a full year if we count Black Panther coming at the end of all this. So the problem is like it doesn't work as a live service game. And we have it's so easy to compare it to things like Destiny, which has got the seasonal model down at this point. And granted, it took several years to get to that point, but Avengers like kind of should have learned the lessons there, and from that game and from Anthem and things like that. So they are not really able to deliver frequent content updates, and when they do deliver them, they're not really meaningful in terms of getting players to stick with them for more than even a couple hours.
Yeah, how
Past
long
the
did
initial
Hawkeye
kind of
take you? I
surge.
saw you tweet about that. You were playing through the Hawkeye campaign. You did it in an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think the base campaign is about anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, depending on how much you kind of race through it. I took my time, and it was about 2 hours. It's, I don't know, maybe 5 missions in the new zone, and then one in maybe one of the old zones, and then it took, I think, another 2 hours to get him to 50. But then I hit that gap you were talking about with some of the characters, where when you're trying to then get your gear score up, like hitting 50 max is one thing, and like that's not hard. They supposedly nerfed the XP curve, but they didn't really. It still is very short, and it did not take long to get Hawkeye to 50. But getting your gear score from like gear score 50 to gear score 150 is, I don't know, 12 to 20 hours of running just a couple efficient pieces of content over and over again, like hives and things like that.
Hives and
And that's
vaults,
not very
right?
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hives, vaults, hives, especially though. I think that's probably where you get the most gear per capita, because like you don't really want to start, you don't want to start farming endgame gear like exotics until you're at the gear cap, which I think is like 135, and you can upgrade your gear to 150.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a tall order to get people to invest that far. Like I did it with Kate Bishop, but Hawkeye is so similar to Kate Bishop and didn't introduce really any new content to grind that I'm going to kind of put him down until there is new content, because I can't really see myself investing in him past that.
Yeah, and you're really, really on the point of where I'm having a disconnect. So I'm still working on Iron Man, right? There's this DLC for Hawkeye. I want to experience the story because the story was one of the strongest things, but at the same time, I'm starting at 0 again if I go over to Hawkeye. He's level 0, he's gear score 1 or whatever they start you at, and it's a whole other upgrade path. So what? I'm going to get him to 50, and then I'm back on the Iron Man grind. And when I look down the path, I know, okay, if I'm actually going to commit, I need to get Iron Man to level 50. There's 2 different levels. There's level 50, and then there's your gear level. Your gear level max is 150. So he's like 19 right now. Yeah, I played a lot of the beta, and then I played very little of the main game. I think I got burnt out on the beta because this game is very, very repetitive. That's the best way to level up. You do literally one thing on the lowest difficulty to get your gear score up. And it takes, like Paul said, I don't know, 8 hours to get a character into that range, into that max level range, unless there's been some, XP or gear farm that I'm unaware of at the moment.
I mean,
And
there might be. I don't know what there really is. Like the harder difficulty you do, the faster you'll get like higher end of round drops. But it's still, I think they might have added a couple more drops per run, but it's still not that significant. So
yeah.
not that much has changed.
So we got the next gen update. Player numbers on Steam are up, and I use that term very lightly. Player numbers are up
Technically, yes.
a little bit, and that's the only metric that's publicly available. So it kind of gives it. It's something that we can work with and we can look at. And Paul, you wrote an article about what those numbers are. So how's it doing on Steam? It's doing great, right? New character, Hawkeye's out.
So
They got this big trailer. Oh wait, what?
the good news is that there has been a 5 times increase in players. The bad news is that means players have gone from 500 on Steam to 2,500.
Yeah.
So in the context of the larger space, games like Destiny and Warframe are averaging about 70,000 players a day on Steam. So I can understand that. Yeah, probably console is a bigger player base, but the point is like this is one of the biggest IPs in the world, Marvel,
Mm-hmm.
but assigned to Square Enix, a huge publisher, through Crystal Dynamics, a very talented developer. So it should be a lot higher than this. And the fact that we're seeing these increases, but I'm going to keep an eye on Steam charts to see how prolonged these are, because I would not imagine this Hawkeye surge lasting longer than a week and a half, which is what we saw with Kate Bishop.
Mm-hmm.
The total percent, I think Kate was maybe like a 3 times increase. This is 5 times, so maybe Hawkeye's more recognizable. There's a new zone, but it's hard to know what will launch this game into even half of what these other games are doing. Like I don't think Avengers even at launch peaked above 30,000. I think it was like 25,000 or something like that on Steam. So it's hard to know what will be the moments, and at least now we have something to point at, like Black Panther, the
Yeah,
expansion, and be like, okay, maybe it's that, maybe that's the moment. But
a well-known,
uh,
a very well-liked character. The trailer was really, really good. Is it going to move the needle? And that's sort of the question that I'm left wondering, right? All of this is about getting new players in. How do they get new players? If Black Panther doesn't do it, what do they need to look at specifically to get new players in? I think for me, the thing that I have, another one of my qualms with the game is that every character feels the same in that you have a shooting mechanic, you have your fairly basic combo, and yes, they do different things visually and they sort of have their own unique flair, but at the end of the day you're largely doing the same stuff. Like even Black Widow has a not a fly mechanic, but she can grapple to the high areas and everything. And I think they're too similar. The differences that they do have, I think they need to really, really lean into those. But that's really difficult with how they've designed the sandbox. The sandbox is it's basically a beat 'em up, right?
yeah,
And I think that's problematic for the game. I think at the end of the day, everything feels a little bit too samey. So you're relying on fans' love for the character that they're playing as. And the grind's not that interesting. So I don't know. Like there's a lot of push and pull here that I'm trying to convey, but it's not resonating in the way that even I hoped. And I'm a big looter fan. Any thoughts on that, Paul?
I would disagree with you a little bit in that I do think at least the first 7 characters feel significantly different than one another, and like it is the sandbox is limited because you have to balance it for all these different characters, so it is going to feel somewhat similar because you're only facing the same enemies. But I think they did do a good job of separating out the characters where I enjoyed jumping between them for what felt like a different play experience. I think one of the recent problems has been the Hawkeye Kate Bishop crossover where they
Too
really
shoot.
tried to give Hawkeye, some unique signature moves and things like that. Except, it would have been one thing if Kate Bishop and Hawkeye came out within a month or two of each other, which was the original plan. But these are going to be the only 2 heroes in the first year of the game, which is like a massively delayed version of what they were originally supposed to do. Like we were supposed to have Spider-Man, like we are supposed to have Black Panther a lot earlier than this. And all these other characters have been data mined that they're supposed to be working on. Bucky Barnes, Captain Marvel, like there's a good amount that are supposed to come, but the schedule has been delayed, so we just get 2 archers,
Yeah.
and they couldn't really change that because this was their plan, and they couldn't just, I don't think, just reverse course and do totally new heroes. But the way this is played out is like, yeah, I took Kate Bishop to max after 3 months, but 3 months later, getting a like 60% similar version of Kate Bishop again is not terribly motivating to grind. So that's why I just couldn't do it this time. Like I have too many other, live service games, Destiny, Genshin Impact, whatever, that I care more about than
So if
grinding 40 hives.
and if it's problematic for you, my question is, what is it going to take to get new players, first of all? Maybe Black Panther will do that. But also, how do they motivate lapsed players like myself? Something, and seeing I am a lapsed player, I'll just chime in really quick with my thoughts. Division does this thing where they do like double XP weekends. So if Marvel were to do that, be like, hey, have you missed out on Marvel? Or do like I don't know, just anything to incentivize me to sign on and really, really telegraph that as loud as they can. Because right now, a lot of their updates are hidden behind their War Table blog updates. And I don't feel like I'm seeing on social media that things are happening with this game. It feels like nothing has happened except for the character drops.
their War Table updates are like, it's supposed to be like the TWAB, like with Bungie, where they come up every Thursday, and it's literally like, here's what's in the cosmetics store. Like, here's what these modifiers mean on the weekly quest. Like there was no news in that. And so I guess it was, they did put out a roadmap alongside Black
Yeah.
Panther. And this is something that they kind of did directly as a result of like people wanting to know like what the hell was going on, as because they just never did anything like that before. Like they kind of hinted at things that were coming, but they never did a literal roadmap. And now they have one. They have one that's extending for about 6 months until Black Panther. But I don't know how much is on that roadmap that will truly get kind of players excited or be like having players come back for like this specific thing or that specific thing. And some of the things that are still not on the roadmap and still don't have dates are like the true endgame content, like their raid equivalent activities and like things that are supposed to be like these coordinated 4-player challenging activities. And they were teasing those like weeks after launch, and it's 6 months in and they still can't date them. And they still, I asked them, I'm like, what is taking so long with these? And they're just like, oh, we want to get them perfectly right. And that we don't want to launch them half baked and whatever. But like, it has been such a long time. Like, imagine if like Vault of Glass launched, 8 months after Destiny came out. Like it's that kind of thing. Like they're for someone like you're having trouble even just getting on board with some of these other characters. Someone like me, I have no idea what to do with the characters I've maxed out. Like there's nothing to do with them other than grind for even more optimal builds that I have nothing to actually do with. Like there's no content that is challenging enough or important enough to run. There's the 40 floor mega hive, but that's not hard. It's just long. So like I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, and Destiny has faced those challenges too. But then this season comes out, there's not really a raid, there's Grandmaster Nightfalls. And I don't mean to go off on a tangent about Destiny, but they have challenging content in a season where they don't have a raid. And Avengers just doesn't have that. Avengers has the grindiest stuff you've ever played in your life. And it's really repetitive, especially if you're playing with a character. I think, I don't know. It's really, really tough for me to justify going back into it. And my final question for you is just, we've seen the Steam numbers. We've seen how the community is feeling about the game. It's been out. Has it been out a year yet, Paul? 6 months
no,
at least?
This is 6 months, pretty much exactly. Yeah.
So my final question is, will this game be abandoned by Square? What do you think? Yes or no, and why?
I am not feeling optimistic about it. I think Black Panther is the moment. I think it'll go one way or the other when that expansion hits. And if that does not dramatically increase player count or player spending or whatever, then I think that they're just going to kind of call it a day. We don't know everything that's in that. It's supposed to be bigger than anything that's come before. It's a brand new hero, brand new zone, multiple villains, big storyline. And that's the thing that it kind of needs. Like if that is a Taken King, Reaper of Souls moment, that could do it. It's just that nothing I've seen from the game post-launch, post-campaign has indicated to me that they're going to be able to pull this off. I think it is just more work than they are able to do. I think they're very passionate. I don't think that they're trying to just like, let's just like coast and, maybe move on to the next project. I really think they want to make it work. And I think they have a lot vested in this, but if they've gone from a schedule of, okay, let's get 3 heroes out in the first 3 months to 3 heroes in the first year, maybe it's not enough to kind of satisfy the live service crowd. And when the updates come, there are things that you can, get past in 2 hours. And like the way things are now, like the Hawkeye update, imagine like a new Destiny season dropping with no loot. Like that's kind of what it feels like. Cause like I have 7 characters that there's nothing to do with them. There's nothing dropping now that wasn't dropping before for them. It's just leveling up Hawkeye. And I think they're running into, I guess, the Borderlands 3 problem where Borderlands 3 didn't want to make new Vault Hunters and DLC because their data said that people didn't use more than 1 or 2 Vault Hunters in the past games. And if Avengers' plan is to make like 7, 8, 9, 10 heroes when they can't even get people to invest really hard in 2 or 3, what's that really doing for them? So I think the overall model is a problem. And it almost seems like the opposite of what they should be doing, where, a lot of Destiny is now free to play and then they sell expansions and sell seasons and stuff. Whereas Avengers is still selling the base game and people are kind of hoping it comes to Game Pass or something like that. But all the post-launch content is free. And even this expansion, this huge expansion is going to be free. So I don't know, just economically, I'm wondering how that's going to work for them because they're relying so hard on selling cosmetics. And that's it. That's like their entire sustainability strategy. It's like if Destiny was only supported by Eververse
Yeah.
And I don't know if it would even survive if it had to rely entirely on that. But they committed to this model, and they would get flack if they changed it now. So they're in a little bit of a quagmire, I'd say.
I hadn't even considered the fact that, yeah, I'm leveling up Iron Man, but why? There's literally been no new thing for me to chase for Iron Man. There's no new additions. All the content's always going to be there. And like, I don't, besides you, I don't really have any friends online that are like, hey, let's go play Avengers tonight, you know? So if
Fran
you're playing
plays.
it, yeah, Greg plays, right?
Yeah,
But
Fran
like,
and Greg, yeah. They're the only two
yeah,
people I know.
nothing's really going on in my like circle of friends with coordinating to play Avengers
It's
on
not a popular
weekends.
game. Like
Yeah.
writing about Avengers is like guaranteed for me to get no views because
Yeah.
like nobody really cares. They don't. And like people are kind of it's still kind of in meme status where people are like that game still exists. Like
Mhm.
like it's just has not caught on to the point where it does remind me of Anthem in a lot of ways, which is
It's
unfortunate
scary.
because I think it has so many things going for it. It's just I don't think they can kind of get around this hill.
So, my thoughts on that final question, will Square abandon it? Square needs to look at sales of the game, first of all, because you have your core sales with the story, right? And then they have to look at how much money people are spending on cosmetics. Is this a big system seller for them? And then they have to look at server costs, and server costs are expensive. You probably saw the news where the rumor is that Sony's going to be shutting down the PS3 store. Are 2,000 players on the Steam store spending? Are they all elephants? Are they all spending $5,000 on cosmetics? Probably.
Elephants? Do you mean whales?
Whales, yeah, that's what I meant. My
Elephants.
little boy really loves elephants, so
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. But anyway, like eventually Square has to look at the business model and say, are we going to continue to support this? They've said they are, but so did Anthem. And everybody's looking at what happened with Anthem right now, and they're eyeing Avengers with that side eye saying, yeah, you guys sure you're going to support this? Because it doesn't look like it's doing so hot.
I mean, they will deliver more content than Anthem in the end. Like, they're not going to cancel this Black Panther expansion that will come out. Like, they have done these updates. They have some things coming on the roadmap. So after this first year, they will have already released more content than Anthem pretty much ever did. Like, Anthem just went into essentially hibernation, like indefinitely. But I don't know if that will mean it avoids this fate or not. And I'm wondering how much patience they have because we already know like Avengers undersold at the very beginning of this, and like the base game is actually pretty good. Like the best part is the initial campaign, and the first 6 years you get to level. So it already was kind of starting at a disadvantage because it didn't move the way they wanted it to, and then all their follow up support is free content except for cosmetics. So that is a very very steep uphill battle because you need players so dedicated that they're not just like coming for the new content, they're also willing to pay for cosmetics.
Mhm.
And there's just not that many. Like you can only have so many skins. Like they're not selling the characters, they're selling skins for the characters. So there's only so many skins you can even sell for these, to the point where
Yeah.
like, okay, you have a favorite, like I don't really care about the next 9 Iron Man skins they release if I get the one I like. So
It
that
would have to
I
be
don't
something
know.
like really special. And yeah, man, I don't know. Like if that's their business model, that's really, really concerning. Paul, I think we've talked about everything we wanted to talk about Avengers, potentially for the last time, only because, like you said, hopefully people watch this and they like this show. I did say at the beginning of the show an important note about the format of the show. So before we get to that, Paul, where can people find your stuff?
At Paul Tassi on Twitter. I have a new newsletter called God Rolls. I should put that link in my Twitter or something. I don't know if I already have it. uh, Paul Tassi on YouTube. And you can Google me for my articles, which are on Forbes.
All right. And I said this was to the death, so it's fatality time. Paul, you get
Oh,
the
no.
honors of the first fatality on the show. Let's do it.
Okay.
Finish him! Fatality. Outstanding.
Well, I murdered Destin, which is how most of these episodes are probably going to go. So, in memorial, you can subscribe to his channel or subscribe to my channel, which is better. So, whatever you want. Thanks for watching.